Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, friend. Welcome back. And I am so excited to have a new best friend with me today. Her name is Riana, and Riana is amazing. And I am so excited to hear about our unconscious trauma, that trauma that's happened to us throughout our lives, whether it was when we were a teeny baby or yesterday. We have trauma constantly. And I'm one of those people that will tell you I've never had any trauma, but I know better. And Riana's going to help us to frame that and understand where our trauma has come from and how it may be holding us back from love, from business, and even from ourselves. So Riana, welcome to the show. Everything about you is in the show notes already. Our listener can go down there, find you, reach out to you. So share with us that trauma. I know that I pretend or I feel like I haven't had any, but
That's what
I'm
most
not
people
perfect.
say. Yes.
And I know
But thank
that
you,
there's
Lara
been
Jane,
things. So
for
welcome.
having me on your show. And I'm excited to talk about that. But most people will say, I don't think I had trauma. So just to give a brief background, I am a licensed mental health counselor for over 24 years and a certified clinical trauma professional advanced level 2. So this is my go-to expertise that I help people from around the world with. And all the research shows that at least childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. So in 2012, I created a childhood trauma checklist based on my experience of working with different and varied ages and education. So that includes working in a child mental health hospital from ages 5 through 19, in drug and alcohol rehab centers, one for teens, one for women from the prison system. In my private practice, where I treated people from 5 to 85 years old, and also in the school system, from working with kids from kindergarten all the way through college. So although these sound like very diverse ages, education, men, women, various cultures, the interesting thing is subconscious childhood trauma impacts all of us in the same way. And I will go over the top 10 traumas that most people can identify. They have 3 or 4 of them. But first, yes, it goes through 3 generations. And in 2021, the research shows that 100% of us childhood trauma. So I'm going to challenge our listeners to see which ones they might have, because everyone has something. And first, I want to say that there is big T trauma and little t trauma. So big T trauma is what most people think of trauma. For example, I was in a car accident and lost a leg. That certainly is a big trauma. Or I was raped by a family member. We all can see that as a huge trauma. But the everyday little traumas that people go through, they just kind of look at it and slough it off as, well, that's childhood, or that's, everybody goes through bullying. And, even though as a chubby child and teased for that, oh, so what? I grew up and I was thinner. But it does impact our psyche, our inside, our soul. Okay, so these everyday things that people don't think about is what I'm going to go into today.
I'm excited. This will be fun.
All right, so the top 10 traumas from research that I have found and from my own experience as a therapist. The first is if there was any drug or alcohol issues or addiction issues in the family. So being also an addictions counselor, I have 12 of these. So drugs and alcohol are obvious. But then there's also addiction to sex, meaning, somebody was a cheater and you knew about it. Porn addiction, food addiction, workaholism, gaming, gambling. So there's many more addictions that could have impacted the family. Trauma 2 is verbal messaging. What type of messages did you hear when you were young? Did you hear, you look heavy in that, change your outfit? Did you get compliments and hear the words, I love you? Or instead, did you hear, I'm not paying for college, you'll never make it? Meaning you feel like you're not good enough. So these verbal messages are extremely important. If you're parents and listening, what you say to your child really matters. These messages stay with you. for a very long time. So verbal messaging is another. Number 3 is emotional abuse and neglect. Number 4 is any physical abuse, rape, or molestation. Now, it's funny, I did this checklist with a client coming into me, and she didn't pick that one out. But later she was telling me a story that, yes, she got hit by a switch, which is a branch from a tree, if they did anything wrong. And I said, oh, that's funny. You didn't mention physical abuse. She goes, well, that was just normal in my neighborhood. So this is what we call normalization of our past trauma. And many people normalize their situation or the behavioral norms. Okay, so the next one is around abandonment. And I named 2 types. There's fault and no fault abandonment. So no fault means if your parent happened to die early, if they're traveling for work, because that's how they support the family. And that was my case. My father, we didn't know, was FBI, CIA. But I remember asking as a kid, where's daddy? When's daddy coming home? And my mom said, well, I don't know where he is. You know, and you wonder as a kid, is he okay? Right. So that was just normal in my family. And then another one would be if the parent was deployed over at war. Now, at the time during Iraq and Afghanistan war, I was working in an elementary school, and a lot of kids were being called by their teachers ADHD because they were just kind of checked out. They couldn't concentrate. The problem is, if their parents were over at war, they're seeing all these messages at night, worried about if mom or dad will be coming home, and they can't concentrate because when cortisol is up, which is our stress hormone, memory and learning and focus is down. Okay, and this impacts adults also. If you're going through a stressful time, a divorce, and you're not performing as well on the job, it's because your cortisol is so far up that your memory focus is down. Okay, so then there is fault abandonment. That's never being active in your child's life, being active while the couple is together. They separate, you barely see the child. That even counts if you're in the household, but not emotionally connected. As a therapist, I can't tell you how many times I had kids say, I have to go to my dad's house. I don't want to go. He just sits and watches football. Now, how many times have you heard a kid say that? He doesn't play with me. We don't do anything. That's an emotional disconnect. And it's a fault because that parent's fault is not getting involved with their child when they have the time. So that's around abandonment, which is a big one. Okay, the next one is if you were adopted, part of foster care, or living in another person's home because your parents couldn't take care of you. That could even mean grandma, an aunt, or a family friend, but you still feel displaced and not wanted. The next one is personal trauma, trauma number 7. Most people can relate to this. Were you ever bullied? You didn't feel good enough, pretty enough. You might have been the only African American in an all Caucasian school. You might have come out as a gay or lesbian teen and your peers or your family did not accept you. You might have been a skinny, gawky child and called a nerd. Okay. You might have been smart and called a nerd because you were smart. So all these different reasons of not fitting in or feeling good enough, not being part of the cool crowd, that impacts a lot of people. Trauma 8 is around siblings. So it could have been your sibling was born with a medical issue, which commanded more of mom's and dad's time, or they bullied you, or most often you perceive them to be the golden child, the favored one. So were they the star athlete? Were they more pretty or handsome than you? Were they the star student? Okay, so that's around siblings. Trauma 9 actually has 2 parts. I had to bring down from my list number 11. Number 11 was community trauma. It's now part of 9, which is family trauma. So community traumas now happens to be one of our biggest traumas. And there's not anyone on the podcast listening that can't relate to how COVID might have impacted them. COVID was a community trauma around the world. Other community traumas are Mother Nature events, floods, fires, hurricanes impacting our community, our school shootings, our mass shootings. Okay, so there's all kinds of community events that happen that impact the family. But then the other part of 9 is direct family trauma. So where did you live? Were you growing up in a dangerous neighborhood? Did your family move every 2 to 4 years because they were military and you had to move? Did you grow up always hearing lack messages like we don't have the money for food or I can't pay the heating bill this month? Oh, the inflation's so bad. We don't have enough money to pay our bill. These are what we call lack messages. And they put the fear of not having enough money into a child. And this is an adult that grows up in business and wants to advance in their own career, but is deathly afraid of investing in the coach that's going to take them to the next level because they think maybe, it won't work for me, or, I don't really have the money, and they have 100,000 sitting in their bank account. So they do have the money, but the lack mindset keeps them stuck in not playing their full big self, going to their fullest accomplishment. Right. And then the last one is mental health issues in mom or dad. Now, I am part of the baby boomer generation, and we didn't really see our parents go to counseling. And so we kind of have to guess. We're the two worst for kids to navigate is bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. So borderline is a very erratic mood parent. When they're good, they're great, but when they're bad, they're horrid, and the child never knows what they're going to get. So it's this rocky eggshell feeling for that kid, keeping them in a constant state of anxiety. The other one is borderline, which is manic depressive. Well, people think manic's that high and happy stage. Well, it could be if you're on a shopping spree, that the following month when the bills come, that depression could be sitting there for months because that parent doesn't have the money to pay off their shopping spree. So that is the top 10 childhood traumas that, from my research, I help my clients heal, and the behavioral norms around them, so that they're not dragging them into their adult life, love relationships, or into their business lives.
So if we did have any of these, which I have very few, so I must be lucky. So if we have some of these, how do we make it so we are not still being affected by it? So I'll use one, lack messages. And I'm not sure if that, or if it was family or community trauma, but growing up, I wasn't real dedicated at school. I didn't like school. I didn't want to sit and learn. It was just not fun. And I would get the message, I'm going to paper your wall with failing notices. You've got to apply yourself. You've got to do more. And I know that it is one of the reasons I've always overextended. I've always worked harder or longer thinking I needed to make up for these things. So there's one trauma out of all of the ones you talked about that I can
verbal
say,
messaging.
yeah, this is one that fits. Yeah. And how do I let go of having to try and fix everything or work harder to be equal to everybody else?
Yeah, that verbal message is saying subconsciously, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough compared to the other kids. My parents are disappointed in me. These are the subconscious messages that can stay with people and keep them stuck throughout their lifetime. For many people, it leads you to workaholism, where you're working subconsciously to prove yourself. I am worthy. I am good enough. See how good I am. Right now, we all need ego development. We all need that self-love that makes us feel great about ourselves. So how do we get that? If we didn't have the verbal messages, like I never heard, I love you. I never got compliments. Finally, when my book, Love Beyond Your Dreams, went to #1 bestseller and was in Barnes and Noble, I was 52. And my mom said, that's a really great book. I'm like, oh my God, Mom, thanks. It's the first compliment I ever got. So, that workaholism can be part of our lives unless we become very consciously aware and heal our past trauma messages or experiences, right? So I describe it as a process like a rainbow. You're starting here. How can you change what you don't know or understand? So once we know what your traumas were, when I do an assessment for my clients, which is called a discovery session, I find out what are the traumas, what are their struggles as an adult, and then I bridge the two. Then we have to rewrite. It is a process of healing the past traumas. So not only is there the childhood trauma, but let's talk about how these show up in love, because your direct childhood experiences definitely impact who you're choosing as a partner. So with our divorce rate close to 60%, obviously there's a lot of people walking around choosing the wrong partners. And it is the past childhood experiences that lead you to love trauma. And the reason is the brain likes homeostasis, meaning it likes what it knows, whether it's good or bad. So chemistry, which we have been taught around the world, especially in America through movies and romance novels and fairy tales, a handsome prince comes and kisses you, and now you're in love and you marry that person. We are again like it is going back to the old patterns. So this is why we might have a woman that says, "Oh my gosh, like I divorced, and then I read like 200 self-help books, and I went out and I picked the same kind of guy. And then I broke up and I said, I got it right this time. And then the third time, that's what we call RRS. There's actually a term for it, relationship repetition syndrome. Okay, so it shows up by picking the same person, different face, same personality type over and over and over again. Or one person will break up, their conscious mind will say, he's no good for me. And I know he's no good for me. You break up, but about 10 to 14 days later, the research shows you go back again. The I'm sorry's, I'll change, you'll see, I'll prove it to you. They take them back because they are addicted to that partner, which we call love addiction and codependency. And they need that, they crave that more than the self-love. So that's a sign that the self-love is really low. And we have to get you into confidence, self-esteem, and self-love. So you are choosing a healthy partner. The research shows that breakup, get to back together pattern is 7 times. So RRS shows up in 2 ways. So our goal is to heal the past traumas, childhood and love trauma, so that you can go out and have the love that you deserve, an emotionally healthy, evolved, and conscious partner. So let's talk about how do these traumas show up in love. So if you heard the messages of you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, very often there's jealousy and control in your relationships. You don't truly believe your partner loves you. If you had abandonment issues, this is where codependency comes from, love addiction, feeling very anxious. If your partner's out of town on a trip, you get really highly anxious. Are they going to meet someone else? That kind of feeling. A lot of women do people pleasing. If they had a difficult parent, they will keep pleasing the difficult partner, showing their love. And this is when I have couples show up and the woman might say, I do everything for my husband and my kids. They do nothing to show that they love me. So they're angry and they're burnt out and they're exhausted. And the stress is super high because they're not getting any love back in their mind, but they're so used to overdoing to get love from the difficult parent. There's perfectionism, blaming behavior, like that's you'll see in the narcissist. The narcissist has a lot of traumas. And after the narcissist is a sociopath that uses another person for lifestyle advancement, profit, or pleasure. That's the sociopath. And the codependent usually tends to fall in love with the narcissist, right? So the narcissist is getting all these accolades from the codependent who just has all this craving to feel loved. And they will do that in the beginning, but then it's a very unbalanced relationship. So that's how that can show up in love. In business, like I said, you stop and stay stuck at a certain level. You're afraid to grow. You're afraid to take on new challenges. You're afraid to invest in yourself. And that's the biggest shame because, people when they're older, it's like, I wish I did. I wish I went for my dreams in business. I wish I took that next step, And I love coaching. I mean, I'm a coach, but I invested in 12 coaches to get to where I am around the world. So, that investing in yourself mindset comes from a healthy mindset, right? You love growing. I was just talking to Laura Jane that, I'm in AI classes now learning this new technology, which is very exciting. And how can I use this and help more people in different languages that I don't know? So different things like that, that you're excited to grow and change and learn comes from a healthy mindset. So those are just a few examples.
Yeah, that's a lot to remember. So we need to take a quick break. When we come back, what I would like to do is talk about okay, now that I know what the 10 are, and maybe I can recognize a few, what do I do next? So we'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice. Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
All right, Rihanna, what do I do next? I mean, I've had tons of coaches. I love coaches. I love working with them. And I don't think I've ever tried to fix a trauma it wasn't something that was even on my mind. And so if I'm not feeling good enough, or if I feel like I'm not being recognized at work for all the things that I've been put in, how do I adjust that based on identifying the trauma?
Okay, well, first, yes, the first step's identifying what your traumas were, and they're different for everybody, and there are different intensities for everybody. Then looking at your adult life and saying, this is happening or not happening for me, and I want to change these patterns. I want to change what we call a fear-based negative mindset. Research shows 8 out of 10 people have 8 out of 10 negative thoughts. And the self-talk is always going in their head, and it's negative, or it's put downs, or I'm not good enough, or of course I didn't get that. Why would I win? Or, whatever it is, it's negative. So my programs are about 2 parts. We have to change and heal the childhood trauma patterns first. Recognize what's going on in your adult life now. Create a chart of the ideal life. I say, what is the life you desire? What are your big dreams and goals? Let's map them out on paper. What are 3 things we can do to reach each one? And as they get emotionally healthy, more confident, and their self-esteem grows, they notice that they are working their life that they desire chart, and they're starting to excel, and the confidence is going up. So this is the rainbow, right? So there's this learning curve of using all the trauma recovery skills that I know that I have to teach them, and they're different for each person, depending what they went through. And as they're practicing those skills, they are doing the other things to advance themselves in life. And I'm there to cheer them on and give them, the challenges aren't too hard, but they are conscious awareness. We can do this, we can do that. And as that grows, the second part now is now they want the love that they deserve. So if they're single, they need to know the exact skills to get them an emotionally healthy partner. Nothing that anybody ever taught us, and now that they know the childhood trauma skills, we do what's called conscious dating. They are in front of a person. I have a series of 24 questions that they're asking. It doesn't sound like an interview. They're just having normal conversations, but they are finding out how aligned this person is in their qualities, character, morals, values. It's not about, oh, he's hot, I think I'll date him. We don't care about that. Who is that person on the inside? Are they emotionally healthy? That's the number one thing we're looking for. Yes, there has to be an attraction factor, but it's not the number one thing, which we call chemistry. It's everything else first. Okay.
So our
So
friend is most likely married and working. Can this also be the people I choose to work around and not just love life? Is there another way that those same traumas would affect me in business today or in my relationship at work?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of difficult coworkers, that are super competitive or jealous or sneering behind your back, or the tyrant boss. These are all evidence of childhood trauma patterns if they're acting that way. Some people that are very emotionally healthy, it's like, I am not dealing with that. I am creating my own business and having the life I desire. So I help a lot of people launch their new businesses. So I do that as well. And so it really depends. What is it that you love to do? Are you doing it? Do you have your purpose in life? And if you haven't found that yet, that's a big part of life satisfaction and happiness. It's a big part of joy. So we look at the whole life wheel, and that's where we start building what is that life you desire. And that could mean a new career or improving the one that you have. People that have chosen to stay in their career, thinking right now of a realtor, he doubled his income with working with me within 6 months. We were patched up his marriage. He was ready to leave the marriage. He lost 40 pounds. That was on his wheel. I'm heavy during COVID. I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel sexy. So he lost the 40 pounds. He started doing volunteerism, living his purpose. Then he always dreamed he wanted to flip homes. I said, well, let's get you started on what that looks like and what you have to do. And then he was in the process of rebuilding and flipping a home while he was working with me, doubled his income. And he's there, oh my God, this is awesome. My whole life has changed and it's a complete tax deduction. So technically, either pay taxes or improve your life, and that's what you get when you're working with a licensed coach. So it's very exciting to see the personal transformation and people not feeling stuck anymore in their relationships, in their work life, whatever. But yeah, this will show up in your communities at work for sure.
Okay. So it's not just whether I'm happily married or not. It's how I get along with all people based on the trauma I experienced as a kid.
Yes, I work with singles, I work with couples, straight, LGBTQ from 16. My oldest person that came to me was 76 years old. So he is now with a woman, 7 years. He goes, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. Went through 4 marriages, 4 women divorced him. And he's like, I don't know what's the matter with me. I'm going to die alone. I said, not if you change your life, you won't. And he was a prior gambler. So he thought because he went through GA, he ended that addiction, but the personality stuff didn't change. And that's where we had to go back to the very beginning, where he was abused by his mother, which again, trying to have a relationship with a woman was not working because of the attitude towards women, which to him was like not a big deal. But he had to learn the nuances.
And frame it to our boss. So if a relationship, that's kind of a long-term commitment. So if I'm having issues with people I work with and I'm needing to figure out how do I get over this or how do I make it through,
but your
there's
personal perceptions have to change. Instead of taking it personally, like, oh, he's picking on me, blah, blah, blah. Our people will say, they have some issues probably going on with home. They're not happy with several things. I'm good where I am. I'll go up to Joe and say, Joe, is there something that I've done that has hurt your feelings? You seem angry with me. Let's clear the air. What's going on? Or can I support you in some way? We have the confidence to do that. That's what we call empowered communication. So our people don't take things personally from the outside world because our self-love is not going to allow that. And we are peacemakers, right? We are evolved, meaning being our highest and our best selves. Is it a spiritual concept? Yes, our people are spiritual, meaning that's who we are 24/7. It's not about going to church once a week. It's about who we are, right? And we develop that personality of trying to do the right things for ourselves and the other person, the community, whatever. We're always consciously aware of what we do, what we say, what we write. And it's always looking towards peace and love. So if there's someone difficult at work, we learn to go up and say that. I mean, my own daughter, I raised my girls on this. They're both very, very successful today and married, successful moms and career women. And, my one daughter is being bullied in school because she was a recording artist at the age of 16 and the girls were bullying her. So she went up to the queen of the bullies and said, you seem very angry with me. Was there something I did that hurt your feelings? And the kindest, most loving way. And the girl just kind of said, no, like, you're like one of the nicest people I know. I guess I'm just jealous. You have a really nice boyfriend. You're singing with this top recording artist. You're a model. And she goes, well, those are just things that I've desired to do in my life. But, I'd also like to be your friend. So it's this empowerment. And why did she reach success starting at 15 and she's one of the top coaches in the world, Alexi Panos. How did that happen? Mindset. Okay, so they learn mindsets since they were very young. So when I work with parents, not only do I improve their mindset, I said, please teach your children these skills. Please talk to your kids in a different way. Use empowering language. Be careful you're not critical or saying you got to work harder, you're not doing good enough. You're working as a team with your children. You don't yell at your children. You're only teaching them to yell back at you when they're teenagers. So there's all kinds of rules for parents to learn to help raise emotionally healthy, evolved kids. So we stop this 3-generation pattern of trauma, and once they learn it, it can stop. And that's the exciting thing.
Wow. So I'm still back on that same mind thought. And I think I hear you is I remember a situation where I just did not like a boss at all. And I was doing everything I could except for approach her to get out from under working with her. And I remember when I finally had to sit down and said, this is how I feel. I don't enjoy working with you for these reasons. This is where we're at. And it was the weirdest thing. But from then on, we were like, not pals, but very successful working partner things. We didn't do things afterwards. But it was really when I took my own power back instead of letting her control it and just shared where I was at, shared how I felt. And she had no idea, and so I can really see
so
when
often, they're in their own minds. They're going through something else in their world that makes them miserable to work with. So that's why I said that a lot of times it's not about you, but it's up to you as an empowered adult to have that conversation. Yeah.
So for encouraging our friend here with us to stand up and share her voice, what would be your last words of wisdom for her?
Well, my dad taught me the lessons. He goes, "Hun, if you have the 5 Ds for success, you can do anything." Since I've been coaching, I call them the 8 Ds. So I will go through what those are. Those are desire to do what it is you really want in life. Decide what that is. Make a conscious decision. This is what I want to do. You have the desire. Determination. You have to be determined that nobody's going to talk you out of this. Devotion is the spiritual concepts we use, the faith that you will succeed. Dare to dream and dream big. The drive, when you're tired, you keep working through your project till you're finished. And the discipline to keep going till you reach your goals. There's going to be ups and downs in life. We use a process called the mindset for success, which is where we go into our positive problem solving approaches versus the victim of why me, I can't do it. We ask, what can I do? So I want to encourage everyone at this stage right now, decide to create the life you desire and have the love you deserve. Decide today, use the rest of the 8 disciplines, the D's for success. If you need help, reach out and talk to me at rianamilne.com. That's my website. There's all kind of free resources there. There's a free ebook, Have the Love You Deserve, the 4 free love tests, and the first 60 pages of my books, Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams. So come on over to my website and help yourself.
And for you, those driving, it's right down there in the show notes. So just check it out when you get to a spot. So, Riana, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and helping me to understand how trauma has affected me throughout my life and how it still is there because I have not let it go yet. So thank you for that. Friend, I am not a medical or mental professional. I am here for entertainment purposes. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.